Step away from the boat. That kind of money doesn't sit in hands like yours." Officer Wade Brennan said it loud enough for the whole dock to hear. He had one palm resting on his holster and the other pointing at the gleaming 40-foot cruiser tied to slip 19. The man on the dock did not move fast. He set down the cooler he was carrying. He turned, slow, hands coming up, palms open, fingers spread. "Officer, I own this vessel. The registration is in the cabin. I can show you." His voice was quiet, steady. The voice of a man who had learned a long time ago that calm is the only armor that works. "Sure you do." Brennan walked closer, boots loud on the wooden planks. "Marina like this, boat like that. You want to tell me how a guy like you ends up with a 60-foot yacht?" 40 feet, and I bought it 11 months ago." "Right." Brennan grabbed the man's wrist, twisted it behind his back. The metal of the cuffs bit cold against the morning air. "You'll explain it downtown." He pressed the man face first against a piling. Salt water slapped the dock below. A gull screamed and lifted off. The cooler tipped and bottled water rolled across the planks, one bottle spinning off the edge into the green water with a small flat sound. 3 people watched. A young man with a phone held it up sideways, grinning, narrating to whoever was on the other end. A woman in a sun hat near the harbor office folded her arms and gave a small nod of approval, as if order was finally being restored. And an older couple loading groceries onto their own boat looked once, looked away, and walked faster. He had no idea. Because the black man Wade Brennan had just slammed against a wooden piling, cuffed, and accused of stealing his own boat, was the commanding officer of the United States Coast Guard sector that patrolled every mile of water Brennan could see from where he stood. And in 47 minutes, every person standing on that dock would wish they had said something. They just didn't know it yet. But this story doesn't start here. Rewind. 3 hours before the handcuffs. His name is Marcus Holloway, 51 years old, 29 years in the United States Coast Guard, the last 6 of them as the commanding officer of Sector Northern Atlantic, 1,100 personnel, 42 vessels, and 400 miles of coastline under his command. The men and women who ran search and rescue in storms that killed lesser sailors called him Sir, and they meant it. His father had spent 41 years as a dock worker on the same waterfront where his son now commanded the sea. Loaded crates, coiled rope, came home with hands cracked and bleeding every winter, and never once complained where his children could hear him. He died 2 years before Marcus made captain. He never saw the rank. He never saw the boat. On the wall of the cruiser's cabin, in a small brass frame that Marcus straightened every morning, was a photograph. A younger Marcus in dress uniform. Beside him, an old black man in a worn flannel shirt, tired eyes, hands like cracked leather, and a smile so proud it looked like it hurt. Below the photo, in shaky handwriting on a strip of paper taped to the frame, 4 words. Knew you would. Dad. That morning, Marcus had planned to do exactly one thing. Take the boat out, sit on the water for a few hours where his father could no longer reach him, but somehow still felt close. He wore an old gray t-shirt and faded shorts. No uniform, no rank on his chest. Just a man going to sit on the sea his father had only ever watched from the shore. That was the provocation. A man on a dock near a boat he owned. Nothing else. Wade Brennan was 44 years old and had worn the harbor patrol uniform for 19 of them. Twice named Officer of the Year. His face was on the recruitment banner that hung outside the Marina office, square jaw, mirrored sunglasses, the picture of authority. The captain called him reliable. The mayor had shaken his hand at a fundraiser. There were also 14 complaints in his file. 11 of them, filed by Black and Latino boaters, stopped, searched, questioned, humiliated on docks just like this one. Every one of them reviewed by the same internal panel. Every one of them closed. Insufficient evidence. No further action. The panel was chaired by Brennan's former partner. The system that was about to fail Marcus Holloway had been carefully built over 19 years to protect the man cuffing him. In the back of the patrol car, Marcus did not argue. He sat very still and he counted. Unlawful detention. That was 1. Search of the vessel without consent or warrant. Brennan had radioed someone to go check the cabin. That was 2. Excessive force against a compliant subject. 3. Failure to verify ownership through the registration database that would have cleared everything in 90 seconds. 4. He counted them the way his father counted crates, methodically, without anger, building something. "Quiet one, aren't you?" Brennan said from the front seat, watching him in the mirror. "Your kind usually has a lot more to say." Marcus said nothing. He looked at the water through the window. 43 minutes now. At the Marina office, Brennan made him sit on a metal bench while he filled out paperwork with 2 fingers. He told the woman in the sun hat, who had followed them inside, eager to help, that he'd had a feeling about that one all week. She nodded. Order. Restored. He posted something on his phone and laughed at his own caption. 38 minutes. What Brennan did not know was that the moment the cuffs clicked shut on the dock, a deckhand 2 slips down had recognized the man being arrested. Petty Officer Second Class Dana Reyes was off duty in civilian clothes, helping her uncle scrape a hull. She had served under Commander Holloway for 3 years. She knew that face. She knew that voice. She did not run. She did not scream. She pressed record, and then she made 1 phone call. "This is Reyes. I need the duty officer at sector. Now." A pause. Because a local harbor cop just arrested Commander Holloway and put him in the back of a car, that's why. Inside the institution, something began to move. The duty officer called the executive officer. The executive officer, a woman named Captain Lynn, who had known Marcus for 15 years and owed him her career, did not panic. She activated. She made 3 calls in 90 seconds, to the sector's legal officer, to the public affairs office, and to a number she was not technically supposed to have. Belonging to a Coast Guard investigative service agent who had been quietly building a file on local harbor patrol misconduct for 8 months. That agent's name was David Okafor. He had been waiting 3 years for a case the panel couldn't bury. He had Brennan's 14 complaints printed and tabbed in a folder on his desk. When the call came, he stood up, took his jacket off the back of his chair, and said to no one in particular, "Finally." 24 minutes. In the Marina office, Brennan was relaxed now. He'd put his feet up. He was telling another officer about his weekend, about the fish he'd caught, about how the Marina had really gone downhill with the element it was attracting lately. He gestured at Marcus on the bench when he said it. Marcus heard every word, and his face did not change. "You'll want to make sure your report's airtight on this one," the second officer said quietly. He was younger. He had seen the way the man on the bench sat, too straight, too calm, the posture of someone who had given orders his whole life. Something felt wrong to him. But he used procedural language to avoid saying it out loud, and then he went back to his desk and did nothing. 18 minutes. "Officer Brennan," Marcus said. It was the first time he had spoken since the dock. His voice was even, almost gentle. "You radioed someone to enter my vessel. I'd like the name and badge number of whoever did that." Brennan laughed. "You'd like. That's good. You're not really in a position to like anything right now, Chief. I'm aware of my position. Marcus looked at him steadily. I'm asking whether you're aware of yours. Something in the room shifted. The younger officer looked up from his desk. 12 minutes. The first black SUV pulled into the Marina lot at minute 6. Then a second. Government plates. A woman in a Coast Guard service uniform, Captain Lynn, stepped out, and behind her, a man in a dark suit holding a folder, and behind him, 2 officers from the Coast Guard Investigative Service. They did not hurry. They did not need to. They moved like people who already knew how this ended. The woman in the sun hat saw the uniforms through the office window, and her arms slowly unfolded. The door opened. Brennan stood up, irritated. Help you folks? Captain Lynn did not look at him. She looked at the man on the bench, and her posture changed, and she said the only thing in the room that mattered. Commander Holloway, are you injured, sir? The Marina office went completely silent. Brennan froze. That's... He looked at the bench, at Marcus, at the uniforms. That's not... He was on a... My name is Marcus Holloway. Marcus stood slowly, his cuffed hands still behind his back. Rear Admiral, lower half, United States Coast Guard, commanding officer of the sector that includes this marina, this office, and the water you can see out that window. Brennan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. You radioed for someone to search my vessel without a warrant. Marcus stepped toward him, unhurried. You detained a compliant citizen. You used force. You did not verify ownership of a boat that is registered to me in a database you have access to. That would have cleared this in 90 seconds. The color drained from Brennan's face. He stepped backward into his own desk. I counted 15 violations between the dock and this room. Marcus said quietly. I'd suggest you call your union representative. You're going to need one. David Okafor stepped forward and set the folder on the desk. 14 complaints. 8 months of work. He looked at Brennan and said, We've been waiting for you. Then someone uncuffed Marcus Holloway, and he straightened the cuffs of his old gray t-shirt as if it were a dress uniform, and he walked out into the sun. What happened to Wade Brennan happened in stages, the way these things do when the truth finally has somewhere to go. The video Dana Reyes recorded reached 2 million people in 4 days. The footage of a decorated black Coast Guard admiral cuffed against a piling for the crime of owning a boat ran on 3 national networks. The Marina's phone did not stop ringing. The 14 buried complaints went federal within the week. The internal panel that had closed every one of them was dissolved. Its chairman, Brennan's former partner, placed on administrative leave pending a criminal referral. Investigators found a pattern stretching back 9 years. Other victims came forward. There were more than 14. There had always been more than 14. Wade Brennan was charged with unlawful detention, civil rights violations under color of law, and falsifying an official report. He took a plea. He served 26 months. He is permanently barred from law enforcement anywhere in the country. He cleaned out the desk he'd put his feet up on a Sunday morning into 2 cardboard boxes, with no one there to say goodbye. The recruitment banner with his face on it came down the same week. They didn't replace it. They just left the wall blank. The woman in the sun hat was interviewed by a local reporter. She said she'd assumed the officer knew what he was doing. She said she was sorry. She did not say it to Marcus, because she never saw him again. But she said it. 3 weeks after the arrest, Rear Admiral Holloway stood at a podium at a press conference he had not wanted to give. He did not speak in anger. He spoke the way his father loaded crates, steadily, with no wasted motion. I'm not telling you this story for sympathy. he said. I'm telling you because most people who go through what I went through that morning do not have an executive officer who can make 3 phone calls. They do not have investigators waiting with a folder. They do not have a deckhand who recognizes their face. They go through it alone, and the report says compliant subject resisted, and the complaint gets closed, and nothing changes. He let that sit. A badge is not permission. Authority is not ownership. When an officer decides who belongs and who doesn't based on the color of their hands, the law cannot look away. And for 19 years, in this harbor, it did. Then a reporter asked the question everyone asks. The question the older men and women watching at home had already asked the screen. Why didn't you just tell him who you were? On the dock, at the start, you could have ended it in one sentence. Marcus was quiet for a moment. He looked out past the cameras, the way he'd looked out at the water from the back of the patrol car. Because the next man he stopped wasn't going to be an admiral, he said. If I have to announce my rank to be treated like a citizen, then the badge wasn't protecting the public. It was protecting itself. I wanted to know what he would do to a man with no rank at all. He paused. Now everyone knows. Captain Lin was promoted that fall, and given oversight of the new Community Accountability Office the sector was required to build. David Okafor's 8-month file became the foundation of a federal consent decree that put the entire Harbor Patrol under independent monitoring for 5 years. The younger officer, the one who'd felt something was wrong and said nothing, requested a transfer. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He asked to be reassigned to the unit that investigated complaints, so that the next time he felt something was wrong, he'd have to do something about it. It wasn't redemption. It was a start. And the young man who'd filmed the arrest, grinning, narrating it like entertainment, months later, quietly, he donated to the legal fund for the other victims who'd come forward. He never told anyone. He just did it. On a Saturday evening, late in the summer, Marcus Holloway took his boat out at last. He sat on the deck in the same old gray t-shirt as the sun went down over the water his father had only ever watched from the shore. The brass frame caught the last of the light. Knew you would, Dad. His wife sat beside him, her hand over his. It won't be the last time, she said. It wasn't a question. No, he said quietly. It won't. He watched the harbor lights come on, one by one, all along the 400 miles he was sworn to protect. Until the system changes, he said, someone has to be watching. If this story made you feel something, anger, recognition, or just the weight of how close it came to ending differently, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that dignity shouldn't require a rank. Stories like Marcus Holloway's don't spread on their own. We spread them. Together. And tell me in the comments, have you ever watched someone be judged for what they had instead of who they were and wished you'd spoken up? What did you do? Because every share is a vote for the next person on the next dock, the one with no rank at all, who deserves to be treated like a citizen anyway.